Very nearly said good morning as it's 2 minutes past 12. It certainly is. We've moved into afternoon territory. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Natasha Sampson, and I'm the Regional Strategic Lead for Local Authority Fostering Southeast. Um, it's my pleasure to introduce our facilitator for today, who I understand will also be joined by a colleague, and he will introduce himself in a second, but I just want to say that this is one of a series of workshops that we're running throughout the month of October. As many of you will know, October is traditionally Black History Month. And so, in using the term Black, we're using it to mean the global majority. And so, what we've tried to do is to put together a series of workshops throughout the month, every Tuesday. This is our third session of 5 that we're going to be delivering. And today's session is going to be focusing specifically around skin and hair care. And so I'm going to hand over to my colleague James, who will talk a little bit about himself and his history for you. Just a little bit of housekeeping before that. If you do have any questions, please either use the raise hand feature on Teams, which you'll see across the top of your Teams. It'll say a little thing called raise with a hand figure. You can use that. Please feel free to use the chat box as well. And I'll keep an eye on the chat. And when James gives us the nod for any questions, I'll let him know what's in the chat box for him as well. So can you please, if you're not speaking, keep yourself muted just so that we can manage the space as well. And if you do see somebody waiting in the lobby and I've happened to miss it, feel free to let them in. It's an open space. And this is a safe space. It's a space that you are free to ask questions as well. We will learn together as we journey. And I hope by the end of the session, and certainly by the end of the month, is that we are all enriched by further knowledge on how we can better support or best support or continue to support well our children from the global majority. Without further ado, over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Natasha. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm James Carver. I'm speaking to you today from Hertfordshire, where it's very dark and very cold and quite grim outside. I'd imagine it's probably similar weather where you are. So I'm a social worker. I've been a social worker for over 10 years, and my area of specialism has been fostering. I love working with foster carers, and I've done everything from sort of writing Form F assessments, which some of you will be aware of what those are, to supervising foster carers, to managing a fostering team. So I managed the fostering team at Camden Council in North London for about 2.5 years. And I actually started my role in 2020, which is a pertinent year for a number of reasons. But during my time really working with foster carers, I became really familiar with the system as a whole, i.e., local authorities, social services, whatever you want to call it, but also the real nuance of the role. So, what do I mean by that? So, you receive a child into your home who you've never met before, they've never met you before. It's a different physical setting, it's a different culture, there's a different routine in there, different sounds, different smells, different visuals, everything's different. And you have the daunting task of providing a sense of normality for that child, helping them to feel safe in the world, knowing that they've likely been through something quite traumatic. So the first thing to say is I have a lot of respect for anybody who opens their home up to do that task. It's not easy, I know that firsthand. And I want to talk a bit today about the needs of our global majority children. And like Natasha said, by that we mean our Black children, our children from ethnically diverse backgrounds, because on top of the adversity I've just mentioned, they often grapple with another layer. And that's what we want to begin talking about today. So bear with me one moment. I'm just going to share my screen and we will kick off very shortly. Okay, so I'm just going to put this in presenter mode. Okay. Everybody can see my screen, right? Brilliant. Okay. So I'm going to be joined shortly by this lovely lady next to me in this photo, who's Sarah Livingston. She's a foster carer. She's been fostering for over 10 years and she's cared for over 19 babies, actually, was her area of specialism. She's also the chair of Camden's Association for Foster Carers. And when I was managing the fostering team, me and Sarah worked really closely together. She was like, in a way, the voice of the foster carer. So often she would bring issues to me, she would bring ideas to me, and we would sort of collaborate around how best to sort of provide a service. So let's have a look at what we're going to run through today. I'm going to speak a bit about our mission, why we do what we do, who we are. We're going to look specifically about how all of us have a role to play when it comes to promoting a positive self-esteem for global majority children. We're going to touch on the historical context around hair and skin, and then we're going to look at the practicalities as well. I'm going to talk a bit about intersectionality, and we're going to finish up with what else can we all do to support children from the global majority. So I'm going to pause every so often and just open it up to questions, but there'll also be space at the end for questions. Like Natasha said, please do utilize the chat function. It may be that something comes to mind that you want to write down and ask at the end. However you want to do it, we want this to be a safe space and an open discussion. I know it can be difficult sometimes speaking about the themes we're going to discuss today, but what we want to do really is have a safe space. So, a few principles. We want you to all listen respectfully. We want you to stay curious, and we want you to assume positive intent. By that, I mean, somebody may say something and you think, not so sure about that, don't like the sound of that. For our session today, we want to really have an environment where we can be open, transparent, be respectful, but again, we want to assume positive intent, and that's really going to aid the discussion today. Natasha, just before I move forward, is there anything else you would add around housekeeping or ground rules or anything like that?
No, I think you said it perfectly, James. I think just to really labour the point that sometimes it can feel uncomfortable. You kind of worry, don't you, about using the right language? And I think particularly when we think about the history of, so for example, we now, is it okay to say coloured? Is it okay to say mixed race, mixed heritage, people of colour, and all of those things? I think this is a safe learning space, and actually please don't worry about getting it wrong. This is a space that we can facilitate learning, and by the end of it, that actually we are all much better off because we've shared that knowledge. So just to echo, please do use the chat feature, ask those questions, and be be confident that it's not a space of judgment, but please do be very respectful when you do so.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Natasha. So we are going to move on. So let me tell you a bit about who we are. So, like I said, I'm James Carbo. My background is in children's services. I have a dual role. So I'm co-founder and director at an organization called Replenish Culture, which I'm going to tell you all about today. Um, we are an organization that provides support, training, raising awareness for foster carers, adopters, professionals who work in children's services, all around how best to support the needs of children from the global majority. Our main sort of feature, if you like, is our boxes. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about the boxes today, but in essence, they're a box that contains hair care and skincare products. And the idea is around supporting foster carers in their work, right? So you don't know what you don't know. You have a child rock up at your house. Um, Maybe there's been neglect, maybe there's been abuse and trauma, and actually, you're not so familiar with how to look after their hair, what their skincare routine needs to be. And what we want to do is move away from feeling overwhelmed by that, maybe feeling a sense of shame about that, and actually, what are some practical things we can do to support people in their caregiving task. So we set up Replenish Culture, and it was off the back of the Black Lives Matter movement that sort of came to prominence in 2020. And at the council at Camden at the time, we were having a lot of conversations, really centering that on how can we be a better corporate parent to our Black and mixed heritage children. And one of the first things that came up is, well, actually, when children come into care, if we're gonna remove children from their homes, then we need to do the things that a Black parent would do, right? And that is being confident to talk about race. That is supporting the practical need, making sure children develop a positive self-esteem and a positive sense of self. So the box really is about pouring into our young people. So the project was really well received at Camden, and we've gone on to sort of gather national coverage. And these are just some of the sort of outlets who have picked up on the work we do. Move on. So our story. So like I said, this really goes back to 2020, and what I observed as a social worker and then as a manager was a real discomfort when it came to speaking about race. I would observe that even social workers, senior managers would find it really, really difficult to talk about race, whether that was pertaining to children or pertaining to teams. It's a bit of a hot potato in our society, and there's many reasons for that. Um, but one of the first things we needed to do to be able to make progress was get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Race remains and will always be an uncomfortable thing to talk about. And that's because of the history, that's because of racial trauma, that's because of even the current context. So it's never going to be a straightforward thing to talk about. I'm a parent. I have a daughter who's 3.5 years old, and she's beginning to become aware of race and coming home from preschool and saying certain things. And even for me as a black man, I find it awkward talking to her about race. You know, how much do I share? How much detail do I go into? Is it something that we kind of skate over for now and come back to when she's a bit older? Well, probably not, because these things are going to keep coming home. I need to create an environment where she doesn't feel like she needs to internalize that or just keep it to herself. So, this is really important when we talk about parenting and corporate parenting, that we're willing to feel that discomfort and still create the space for the discussion. So our next step as a council was really to look at what the data was telling us. And very quickly we saw that around about 80% of the children in our looked after population were from the global majority. So that is, you know, the large majority of the children who come into care at Camden are from a background that is non-white, ethnically diverse. And so this is really important. This is not a nice to have. This is something that we need to be doing. Otherwise, you know, we could let them down. We could neglect certain aspects of their care. So we needed to be having these conversations. And thirdly, we needed to ask courageous questions. Is our current offer enough? What else can we be doing? I know it's easy sometimes to just get on with the day job and keep on going with what we have. We know the conundrum of local authorities is typically too much work, not enough resource, you know, and we're putting out fires left, right, and center, often not always being acknowledged for the work we do. Nonetheless, we still have it within our gift to ask courageous questions and strive to be better. And like I said earlier, we really centered our discussion and our work on this key question: how do we be a better corporate parent to our Black children and mixed heritage children in care? And that process really is what led us to the development of Replenish Culture. But just to say as well, as a manager, I was beginning to get a lot of complaints from birth parents, sometimes even from professionals, around the physical presentation of children. And I was finding it difficult because here you have a foster carer doing their best, opening up their home, going above and beyond to provide a level of care. However, you don't know what you don't know. And so for me, it was important not to be punitive, not to go down things like care standards or, punitive measures, but really looking at the support we had available and trying to adapt it. So our hope really with these boxes and with the work that we do is that Black and mixed heritage children feel beautiful, confident, and understood. Okay. Professionals understand the nuance of working with Black and mixed heritage children, and foster carers and adopters have the tools and support to meet the needs of these children in relation to identity, culture, and race. So I want to start by, and Sarah, I'll come to you in a moment. I'll just go through this, what is corporate parenting. So I'll just read this out. So the role that councils play in looking after children is one of the most important things they do. Local authorities have a unique responsibility to the children they look after and their care leavers, relevant and former relevant children. In this context, local authorities are often referred to as being the corporate parent of these children and young people. And the critical question that local authorities should ask in adopting such an approach is, would this be good enough for my child? And I think that's a really pertinent question. I think that is a question that we should keep at the forefront of our minds. Would this be good enough for my child? And if it isn't, then we need to be doing something about it. We need to be having more conversations. We need to be brainstorming, and we need to be addressing that really. So Sarah, I'll just come to you to introduce yourself, and then we'll move forward.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Sarah Livingstone and I'm a foster carer. I've been a foster carer for 10 years. I'm also the chair of Camden Association for Foster Carers, which means that I get a unique understanding of how foster carers are feeling at any one time, and how sometimes they can feel very unsupported. One of the ways that foster carers do feel unsupported is when they're looking after children from mixed and Black heritage backgrounds. And Replenish Culture, CIC, is a way of us sort of upskilling our foster carers, because we think they do an amazing work already, but it's a way of making them feel that they are supported and there is somewhere for them to learn the skills that they need to be able to look after Black and mixed heritage children better. So that's me in a nutshell. And one of the reasons why me and James set this up was that we felt that there was a lack of support, and there was a definite need for what we were doing. There was a definite need for Replenish Culture. And what we've realised going forward, as long as we've been doing it, is that there is a need.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. So what I'm going to do next is attempt to play this video. First, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then start sharing it again, but I just need to include sound. There we go. Okay. Sarah, will you give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound on this, okay, once I press play?
Can you imagine life without Voxy Mobile's unlimited social media and YouTube shorts?
Nope.
The first one. Yeah, this one. Because the skin is shiny. This one. This one. This one. Because this is wet, baby. Because the brown is so dark. He is no cute. I think this one. Chinese I don't really like. One play with me and all the other never play with me. Because I like the peach color. This one. This one. This is the third one. Because I just know brown is smart. Because my father is smart. This one. Because the skin almost the same. Because it's dark brown. This one. This doll. I want to be born peach color.
Hi, everyone. What do you think about her?
She has brown skin.
She does have brown skin. She has a name. Her name is Shanti. So I'm going to go on to the next one. Well, who's this? Okay, but her name is Shah. Okay. Okay. His name is Raj. Joe. What's her name? Do you remember? Shah. That's right. Okay, we'll see who can remember. Who's this?
Rita.
Rita.
She's smiling.
And how about this one?
Yeah.
She likes to dance? Why do you think she likes to dance?
Because she has skirt.
Because she has a skirt, she likes to dance? Okay, what about this guy?
But I think he loves to watch his.
They made stuff up, but to my mind, that was a striking thing. Put a name there, and suddenly these become people, they have imaginary lives. There's a story there that the children want to know about.
By encouraging kids to categorize each face even further as individuals with their own names, instead of the broader marker of race, it can reduce their implicit racial bias.
We find some very promising evidence. Children's bias are relatively easier to change, and when you change that in children, it's relatively stable. The effects are relatively long-lasting.
Okay, I'll stop it there. And I want to open it up now. I wondered if people might like to share any reflections they had watching that. And as well, if anybody could hazard a guess at maybe why I chose to show you that particular video. So I'll just say, raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and I'll come over to you. Hi there, Irene.
Irene, yes. I think it was very sad but telling that the children thought that the white child was smarter. And to see in children as young as that notion, you know, where they picked that up from.
Absolutely. Thank you, Irene. I totally agree with you. It is quite striking when you see, and the research tells us that from age 3, children are aware of race, they're aware of their difference, and like I said to you, I've seen that at home with my daughter as well, who is 3 and is becoming aware of race. And it was really quite striking that even though the children are from diverse backgrounds themselves, they kind of highlighted the lighter doll as the one they wanted to be like. Thank you. Judy.
Hi, yeah, just really quickly, I live in a very, very white neighbourhood in Oxfordshire, and got a little boy of colour living with us, and I did that very last bit with those little children on the video, all noticing the colour first, really kind of struck me, because every I think that's something that everyone always says to me, oh, you know, what's his heritage, what's his parents, you know. And I think my question to everybody, like I've asked this to social worker, but you know, what should I respond? It doesn't really matter where I live, but I think the fact that we live in such a white area makes people ask it more. And they always say, where's he from? And I feel like they could get over that first thing that they see, but I just was wondering what you would say that I should say to people, like, just, you know, none of your business, or what should I say?
Well, it's difficult, you know. I'm reluctant to give a sort of prescribed answer there. I mean, you know, you could ask them where they are from, or you could say, why does it matter?
Yeah.
You know, why does it matter to you?
Yeah, I think that most people aren't saying it to be. I think the reason they feel they can say it is because they don't mean it in a prejudiced way, but it's that unconscious bias, isn't it? Or yeah, I get the same issue with people saying, am I the granny? And that you know, it's kind of similar, kind of, why are you asking these questions? But I feel for him, because it's not really, he's a baby, he can't kind of, he doesn't want me to go telling everybody his heritage. Why should I tell him who his dad and his mum are? You know, it's kind of, without being hostile, you know, like, did it feel offensive to people? That's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah.
You could just turn around and say he's from here and he was born in your local hospital.
Yeah. So I do quite often say, but it's Reading, and then
yeah,
and then see if they're going to say anything more. Yeah.
Just
I think
at that point, they normally realise that actually they've probably approached either the wrong person or came in the wrong context or anything like that. If you just say, yeah, no, he's you know, he's British.
Yeah, but it's just, it makes me feel like they wouldn't say it if he was white. That, you know, obviously, that's kind of, that video you showed really made me realise the difference between the kids you initially, even as a baby, you have to face if you've got global majority.
Every time I see that video, it brings something to the surface for me. I've seen it many a times where we've done the training many a times, but every time I watch it, it's like as if I'm watching it for the first time, because something new comes to the surface when you see these very beautiful, all of them beautiful children that have already made distinctions between the pecking order of where the children lie, which I think can be quite uncomfortable when you realise that they're already indoctored from a very young age, that they're you know, their pecking order is probably lower because of the colour of their skin, and that is quite concerning. And even as me, I foster a young boy, he's 9 now, and about 18 months ago he came and asked me, you know, do white people earn more money than black people? And I had to sort of break it down and say, well, yes, before that was something that used to happen, but we're trying to change it. And, you know, there's not a ceiling anymore for, you know, as long as you're willing to work hard, you know, there is the availability for you to earn good money, you know. But at the time he was like 7.5 and he's asking me questions because somebody had spoken to him about it in school. A white child had brought up it in school and said that I will always earn more than you.
It's horrible.
Okay, thank you.
I think though, you know, Judy, you're kind of answering the other question I had, which was, you know, having a guess at maybe why I chose to show that particular video. And I think it's about really highlighting that the first thing people see when you are non-white is your race. And typically the visible markers of blackness are hair and skin. These are the two things that invite the most curiosity, hostility in some cases. You know, these two things are really the markers of being black. So this is what we wanted to highlight really with that video. And it starts from being a baby, you know. Natasha, you've been patiently waiting with your hand up, so I want to come to you.
I think we might have moved on slightly from it, but actually it was when Judy started speaking, I was thinking about something that happened to me just on Saturday, actually, with my children and my husband. We went to somewhere new, and everyone that was new in that environment was asked to stand up and share their name and their nationality. And so my husband started, and he shared his name and said that he's British, to which we were challenged And they said, no, 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 what's your nationality? And my husband repeated, we're British. And so I said, it then passed on to the children and they all repeated it. And then it got to me and I thought, I don't feel comfortable not challenging even the question. And so I said, do you mean heritage? Are you asking about heritage? Because actually, if you're asking about my nationality is British. And arguably, if you want to get really complicated about it, even in terms of heritage, because my mother was born here, her mother was born here, her mother was also born here, and her mother was also born here. And so, if we really want to get complicated about this is quite a discussion. And I didn't want to hold up the event, but I did feel the need to kind of challenge just a little bit. And I think for me, in answer to your question, Judy, sometimes it goes back to what James shared the first time. We've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And even if that means kind of holding up the proceedings just a little bit sometimes to let people know. And after that, I then also went to, it happened to be a church. We were at church. And I went to the priest afterwards and said, hey, your question, you know, your question kind of wasn't right. And even this morning when I woke up, I thought, I think I need to go back and see that priest and have a bit more of an in-depth conversation, because we need to learn, we need to support. And my children were there, other people's children were there. And what did they subconsciously learn from that interaction? That they're not British, that they can't be British. And I thought we'd moved on from that. And clearly we haven't.
But I also think the children that were there will see that you actually stood up for yourself and you questioned the question, and you, in the way that you did it, you gave an understanding of what the question was asking from you, and you broke it down. So I think what you've actually done there is you've actually shown other people in the room that they have a right to question when they feel something isn't right, something just doesn't sit right with them, that they have a right to say, actually, I'm not happy with the question you've just put forward. What are you asking me here? And I think this is one of the things that we, at Replenish, is that it's about learning to speak up and calling out what doesn't feel right with you. And for your foster children as well. Something doesn't feel right, call it out. Ask the questions, why are you expecting this? Or you've asked me this, and, because that's how we're going to empower our foster children to be able to speak up.
Totally agree. Razwan, you've had your hand up for a little
James,
while.
firstly, thank you both. It's a really interesting session. I think it's usually, as a child, even my own experience, it's usually other people, usually also white British, who will point out the differences. And, my view has always been we're all coloured with slightly different shades, pigmentation. We've all got a skin and colour, and we're all part of one race, the human race. And I've often found, again, my experience and other people young people I've worked with, is when they've first come across this, whether it's in nurseries, primary schools, it's other children pointing it out, and the differences and the inferiorities. It's never pointed out in a positive way. There's always negative, and same with where you're from. I do flip that back. I'm from Maidenhead, and then people get frustrated. Where you from? Maidenhead. Where you from? Maidenhead. And then, I flip it back and put the uncomfortableness onto them, because if you want to know what my heritage is or where my parents are from, ask me. Don't try and make me a foreigner when I'm born and raised here and, work here, pay taxes. And it's that, you do have to challenge it, but it's also the uncomfortable conversations. Like, I don't think there's enough around, like, the disparities in pay. There's data around that. You need to have those conversations because it's a fact. There are differences, inequalities. We also don't do enough to talk about white privilege or colonialism, which still goes on today. So even a lot of, just in the newspaper this week, there's issues going on with Diego Garcia Islands, issues in Palestine going on, which all relate directly to colonialism and the impacts it's still having on people's lives and damage it's doing. So I think it's really important to have those difficult conversations, be uncomfortable, learn from each other, and put an end to this, because otherwise it's going to carry on for generations and generations. It's not going to be resolved. And I'm, you know, I've got a little 2-year-old girl now, and I always kind of, you know, a bit fearful for her when someone's going to point out to her skin's different, or she's different, or like, you know, she's going to earn less money or things like that. Because it's quite, you know, it's upsetting when you think your child's going to go through what you went through 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and it's still happening. So yeah, I think, yeah, really good session. I think, yeah, definitely stuff like this we do need to do more, build on it, make it, you know, more of a regular mainstream, not just have it in October. But to me, every month should be Black History Month and Rainbow Global Majority Month, because it's everywhere, and it needs to be embedded in everything, not seen as an add-on or an extra or a bit of a novelty. Let's just do this month. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Razwan. Really, really pertinent points there. And just off the back of that, I just want to say it's you know, nobody has the right to just kind of stop you in the street and say, where are you from? You know, I would never walk up to somebody in the street and just randomly, somebody I've never met before, and say, where are you from? You know, demanding to know where they're from. So you can hold your boundaries and either engage in it or not engage in it. But I think it's definitely spot on when you say that a lot of this is the legacy of colonialism and what has happened historically. So I am mindful of time, but really interesting conversations. I want to come to Mark next, and then we'll take one more after that, and then we'll move on.
The first video, I think we've seen it before. It always shocks me. The second video was kind of truly heartwarming. The thought that you could teach young primary school children about names and that has a lasting impact. I don't know where that video came from. Is that something that is possible to roll out to schools nationwide? Because it seems like an incredibly powerful thing to do from a young age.
I mean, I think it would be brilliant for schools to adopt that. I think what they did there, in my opinion, that was really powerful was they showed that just by giving a name, you humanize a person. You see, race as a social construct was made to dehumanize. If we look at the history of colonialism and how this construct of race came about, it was about dehumanizing. What they showed in that very small segment was that actually just by giving somebody a name and looking beyond race, you humanize them, and then you begin to develop empathy towards them rather than apathy. So I agree. I thought that was really powerful. And I guess in some ways, maybe schools try to do that. Whether they're doing it well enough is another thing. But yeah, really, it did give some hope, that second video. Irene, we'll take your comment/question and then we'll move on because I am mindful of time. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Is it only white people who will ask, where do you come from, or what's your heritage?
In my experience,
majority.
Yes, the vast majority. Don't get me wrong, there may be times where, you know, Sarah's heritage is, you know, slightly different to mine. We may get into a conversation. You know, my background is from Sierra Leone. Sarah's has a different background, so we may get into a conversation. However, in terms of somebody who I don't have rapport with wanting to know, in my experience, it tends to be that plays out between a white person and a black person.
Okay, so a black person meeting a black person that they don't know.
I think it's more, I think that's more about them sort of like homing in on whether they have a connection with that person. You know, so with me now, because I'm mixed heritage, someone will say, oh, you know, where does your mum come from? Where does your dad come from? And I think that's more about, oh, you know, my mum was Irish and my dad was African. And it's like, if an African person was asking me, it's like, oh, you're African. Okay, that I've got more of a connection to you because of that. I find that when white people ask me that question, it's coming from another place. And it's about maybe trying to figure out how white I am. and whether or not they have that connection with me, whether I am, something to do with them rather than, and I always get the question as well, like, what side do you fall on? Which I think is probably very unique to mixed heritage people, And
what I would say as well is that a black person may ask me where am I from, but it probably won't be the first thing they ask me. It may come further down the line. So I want to move us on because we've got a lot more to cover. Let me share my screen once more. Okay, so what does this all mean? I found this quote around a positive self-view. Let me just read it out. It says, a positive self-view is the foundation of a positive identity. A poor one creates a negative cycle in which your body language, behavior, and others' comments constantly reinforce your worst thoughts. Negativity often exerts a stronger grip on our minds than positivity, so you may need to affirm your self-worth by working to raise your confidence and self-esteem. So I thought this was quite powerful because I think this really sums up some of the work that foster carers have on their hands. It's trying to raise somebody's self-view. So having gone through all of that adversity at a young age, that separation from birth family and everything they know, albeit sometimes it's dysfunctional, having had that racial layer, maybe being othered, maybe being treated differently, how do you raise that person's view of themselves? How do you help them land on a story about themselves that helps them to move forward rather than something that stands in front of them as a barrier, another hurdle to jump over? And I think this is a big part of it all. So I'm just going to play another very short clip from a great program that I'd highly recommend called This Is Us. And basically, This Is Us is about the life cycle of a family. And a white couple adopt a young black boy and really highlights the nuance of that. It's a brilliant program. It's won loads of awards. So I'll just play this clip. Sarah, again, give me the thumbs up if you can hear the sound, okay? No?
No.
Okay. Let me remedy that. Let's try again.
It's also.
Are we sorry you really need sunscreen?
Can you click onto
Absolutely.
that one?
Sure. Ooh. And does Randall need sunscreen? I mean, have we just been wasting sunscreen all of these years?
That I have no answer for.
Randall? Randall?
Sorry, James, could you start
Randall?
it again, but make it a big screen, please?
Randall, hello?
Say that again, Natasha.
Could you start it again, but make it a big screen, please? Is there any way you can make it any
Yeah,
bigger?
I'm not sure I can. I can widen this a little bit.
Or just use the from begin the screen slideshow version. At the moment, it's in presentation view.
Okay, bear with me one moment. So let's try that, okay?
Thank you.
Are we sorry you really need sunscreen?
Yes, absolutely.
Of course you do. Sure.
Ooh. And does Randall need sunscreen? I mean, have we just been wasting sunscreen all of these years?
That I have no answer for.
Randall? 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 Randall, hello? Did you not hear me calling you? Hey, what are you doing over here?
Oh, no. It's okay. I'm watching him.
It's I have him now. I'm sorry. I'm his mother. I was a little panicked. I'm Rebecca.
We know who you are.
You do?
Oh, yes. When a white family has a black child and they don't introduce themselves to any of us, we tend to take notice.
Well, thank you for watching him. He's just not supposed to be over here. Not over here like that. There's nothing wrong with over here. I just mean that I want him where we can see him, where we're sitting in front of us. Thank you. It was very nice to meet you. Randall, come on. Let's go. Come on. Thank you. Actually, you stay right here. That's my son, and I'm his mother. And I don't know if you have some sort of problem with that arrangement, but also I don't really care. Thank you very much for watching my son, but I have him now.
Okay.
Okay.
You need to get the child a proper haircut. the razor bumps on his neck. You need a barber who knows how to cut black hair.
Come on. Hey, I told you to stay with your brother, didn't I?
Sorry.
Is this the real reason you wanted to come to this pool and not the other? Come on, bud. Do you have the name of a barber?
I do.
Well, I would appreciate it.
And I'll write it down. When he gets out of the pool, you need to put lotion on him, or he gets ashy.
Lotion, okay. Thank you. Do you think that my son could play with yours sometime after school?
Yeah. I think we can do that.
And does he need sunscreen or not? He does, right? I thought he did. I knew he did. Can you tell my husband that, please?
Okay, just a very short clip. Yeah, I think for me it stood out because I think it captures the point of, like, you don't know what you don't know. If you don't know, it's about staying curious. It's about doing some research. It's about talking to other people who may know. But what we definitely need to sort of move away from is maybe shying away from things that we don't know about. Because I don't think that does any good for the young people we care for. So that was just a little clip I wanted to show. Now, I want to move us on to just looking very briefly at the legislation in this area. So the national minimum standards for fostering reinforce the development of identity and self-esteem as fundamental to the fostering task. So standard 2 really is about promoting a positive identity, potential, and valuing diversity through individualized care. So this is really important. As foster carers, you will be expected to be able to provide evidence around how you meet that standard. And that may happen in LAC reviews, that may happen in supervisory visits. And it's important that it isn't one that's just skipped over. But I must say, in my time sort of reading write-ups from social workers, I did find that that particular standard was often skipped over or very little detail put in there. And so in doing this work, part of the cultural change we want to make is also about social workers and their confidence to dig a bit deeper and really check for certain things. And Sarah, I don't know if you have any experience of social workers maybe asking about that or.
Yeah, I mean, they do, they ask. I mean, you can sort of, I think there's a stock answer, isn't it? Oh, food, music. And I know that when it's not happening is when the social workers want to know why it's not happening. And I also think that without the support, it's very difficult to ask foster carers to think outside the box when it comes to culture and identity for their foster children. Because I think, you can go on the internet, there's a lot of stuff out there, obviously, and you've got to be curious to do that. But I also think that what Replenish Culture and what we try to push forward is an understanding that it's not something to be scary about, to learn about your foster child in your placement if they come from a different cultural background. And it can be quite fun. And I also think as well that it can be quite a I'm trying to think of the best word, a two-way thing with the foster child, where I think it's a way of showing them that you're there, you're present, and you're listening. And I think that can build a bridge as well. And I think if you can show that to social workers, that you're willing to sort of step out of your comfort zone and maybe find out if there is if your child's Somali, and find out if there's a Somalian group that's close to you or something like that. And also certain things that you can do, whereas take your Black or mixed heritage child to a barber that is Black and deals with Black Afro hair, because that culture within that setting is something that I know that I do with my foster child every 6 weeks, is take him to a barber. And my foster child now says to me, if his barber is on holiday or something like that, and I try and get him to go to another one, he's like, oh, no, you can't cheat on your barber. you know, so he's understanding the sort of the formation of what he's doing, you know, and it's about him sort of feeling that I'm present, but also we're learning together, you know. So we will try different foods and stuff, and that is what I present if I'm asked that question by my social worker. And a lot of the time, because I'm quite curious myself and I love to learn about other cultures, a lot of the time what I tell my social worker, or when they ask me the questions, is way beyond what they would have expected of me anyway, you know. And I think that's, you know, that's what you would do for every child. You know, if a child is into something, or something, the child has something about them, you want them to be able to explore that. And I think this is what culture and identity is. It's what makes the child. And when it's not addressed, and I know that because I was brought up by a white mother in a white family, and I was the only one that looked like me, that I struggled when I reached my teens about addressing who I was and whether or not I had a right to call myself Black. You know, did I fit in the Black community, or I knew I didn't fit in the white community? So, because I was different, so where do I sit? Where do I go? What table do I sit at? And I think what we need our children to understand is that, you know, they have a place, and that place is embraced in the fostering family.
Thank you, Sarah.
Went on a bit of a rant there, James. Sorry.
Don't worry, it's okay. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to bring this back up. So let's look a bit at the landscape across foster care and adoption. And we've got a few stats here. So 8% of children in care are Black. Black children are overrepresented in the care system. They make up 5% of the population, but 8% of children in the care system. They're also less likely to be adopted than white and Asian children. 89% of approved adopters are white. So there's a shortfall of global majority adopters coming forward. And Black boys of African descent face the longest wait of any group, and on average have a staggering 1,300-day wait before being found for a new family. So if we look at a few more stats just here, 58% of Black students experience name calling or uncomfortable questions about their hair at school. 1 in 4 Black adults had a negative experience at school in relation to their hair texture, and 46% of parents say their children's school policy penalized Afro hair. So we know that, again, you know, coming back to hair and skin and why it's important to talk about it, to understand the nuance of it, is it becomes a major talking point at school in terms of being othered, maybe being name called and teased. And as foster carers, as parents, and as corporate parents, our role may become about advocating for that young person in that setting. We know that children who come into care may have a lower level of resilience in terms of ability to engage in learning. We know that they're already coming in from a position of disadvantage because their home life has been so disrupted. So if you add sort of racial bullying or teasing into that mix, then now you've got a cocktail really that's not heading in the right direction, and could spiral out of control really. So again, coming back to our work, Sarah, I think you're saying something, but you're on mute.
To say, I also think as well that the outward signs that somebody might be struggling is skin and hair. So I think, you know, as when a person looks at a Black or mixed heritage person and their skin and hair might be not on point, I think you automatically think, what else is not going on for this child? You know, what else? And then you realize the child is in foster care, and it's like, okay, what else is not being, you know, what else is not being given to this child? And I think that raises questions as well.
Thank you. Totally agree. So like we said, it's about celebrating identity, supporting children to feel proud of who they are and proud of their heritage, providing practical support to them. So the right products to moisturize their skin, the right products for their hair, finding the right barbers and hairdressers for them. And all of this ultimately will not nurture confidence and positive self-esteem amongst children, boost their resilience. And I always say it, you know, when you know who you are, you really become a force, you know, because sticks and stones, you know, it kind of just bounces off you, you know, when you know who you are and the heritage and you know where your parents comes from, the history of, you know, all of that is very, very empowering. And I think particularly for global majority children growing up in the UK, where actually sometimes the media representation is not great. Sometimes there is you know, a lot of negative discourse out there around blackness, you know. It's important to counteract that sometime and say, hang on, that, you know, that isn't you. You know, you are an individual, you are a person, you can define your own destiny. All of these conversations are really, really important. They're almost like coaching conversations, if you like. Sarah, were you about to say something there?
No, I was just going to say, you know, ideally we want our children to love themselves, and that's everything that's about them: color, race, the texture of their skin, the color of their eyes, who they are, you know, their personality, all the things that make them individuals. We want them to, you know, love themselves. And I think, you know, it can be quite difficult when children go to school that they come up against people that have different views of what color means to them. And I know that my foster child went through a very difficult time where a young lady had called him the N-word, and the group of children that he was in denied that it was said. And that was a conversation that I then had to have with him, but also for him to see me go to the school to advocate for him, you know, and he was in the meetings that I had with the headmistress at the school so that he could see the questions that I was asking. And I think even though it was a negative experience, I think he walked away from that experience realizing that actually what that child had said was wrong, what the other children had backed up was wrong, and that he had a right to hold his hand up and say, I'm not, you know, I'm not happy with this. I'm not going to put up with this. This is not, you know, this shouldn't have happened to me. And I think because he'd seen me advocate for him in a very positive way and ask the questions and lead the questions as well, meant that he walked away from that experience with a completely different outlook of what that experience meant.
It's empowering. It's empowering. And he now has a blueprint to and a license to
And he
stand
does
up
it.
for himself. And he does. That's good. Good to hear. Good to hear. So I'm just going to share my screen again and just go through this quote. So I didn't know where to start with her hair. She was with me for several weeks before I got the courage to ask a black mother at the school for advice. I knew it needed combing, and that is all I did, and bunched it into a ponytail because it was so dry. She gave me some tips on what I should use, and now we try a different style every day. And I think, Sarah, when you said about bonding, you know, it can be a bonding exercise, you know, teaching children about self-care and how to pour into themselves. And, you know, there is that correlation between looking nice and feeling nice. And this is now moving into the realms of well-being, mental health as well. You know, when you step out of the barber or the hairdresser, you feel good about yourself. You feel like you're walking on air. You feel a bit more resilient to the things that life can throw at us. So I am going to play a video. What we're going to do now, it's about 8 minutes, this video, and it goes into the historical context around black hair. I'll play the video and then I'll pause and we'll take some questions, comments, or reflections. Sarah, if you could just give me the thumbs up if you can hear it.
It's easy to say something, but sometimes something isn't enough. Interflora, say more.
Wix gives you the power of AI to build the website you need. With full.
What does our world tell us about hair? From fairy tales to advertisements, movies, and music videos, our icons are typically lusciously locked. Long, flowing hair has been a powerful marker of being a woman. But that's not how Afro-textured hair grows. Our hair generally grows upward and is tightly coiled, like this and like this. So what does our world tell us about Afro hair?
Black students at the prestigious Pretoria High School for Girls protested a clause that banned wide cornrows, braids, and dreadlocks.
There's an online petition demanding that Beyonce and Jay-Z do something about their daughter Blue Ivy's hair. One commentator said, quote, no child whose mom spends thousands on her hair monthly should live life looking like a sheep.
Right now, school administrators say the girl's hair is a problem and it needs to be straightened or she'll get kicked out. But her mom doesn't understand how her hair looking like this is wrong.
Mystic Valley Regional Charter School says the two sophomore students' hair extensions violates its dress code. So they're being disciplined with detention and are prohibited from taking part in extracurricular activities.
Mainstream beauty doesn't have Black women in mind. Instead, Black women with Afro hair are expected to conform to an aesthetic that values straight hair. That desire for straight hair is a construct that started during colonization. Let me explain. From my earliest memories, my hair was presented as a problem that needed to be managed. The concept of leaving my hair the way it grew from my head was crazy to me. From weaves to extensions, jerry curls, curly perms, straight perms, and straighteners, my hair was hidden. It was misunderstood, it was damaged, it was broken, and it was completely unloved. That's not surprising. I never saw anybody with hair like mine. Afro-textured hair was, and in many places is, stigmatized to the point of taboo. But it wasn't always this way. In the mid-1400s, Alvise Cadamosto made 2 trips to Africa. In his journal, he wrote this about the people in West Africa. Both sexes go barefooted and have no coverings to their heads, and weave and tie their hair, though short, into neat tresses. Neat tresses. Cadamosto's accounts were positive, partially because transatlantic enslavement didn't exist yet. There was no imperative to dehumanize Africans. To European observers, there is no sense of African hair being ugly or inferior. We see a similar sentiment in Yoruba proverbs. And the Mende described beautiful hair with the word potongo, which means it is much, abundant, plentiful. In reference to hair, the root word poto means long and thick. What contributed to the major shift in Black hair? Slavery. During slavery, the hair of Black people was compared to animals. It was claimed that the tightly coiled African hair was similar to the wool of an animal. That was a way to justify the inhumane exploitation of people. During slavery, a hierarchy emerged where there was a status attached to having more European features. Those with these features, including looser textured hair, while still denied access to basic human rights, sometimes had more opportunity. This is a pattern that was apparent from the context of slavery through emancipation and even up until the present day. Slavery was abolished in 1865, but the stigma around Black hair was not. After slavery, chemical hair straightening products for black people gained popularity. It was seen as one of the few avenues that could provide financial empowerment to black women at a time when those opportunities were practically non-existent. It was seen as a way to elevate their status, so they were marketed with an emphasis on beauty, personal success, and the uplift of the entire race. It led people to believe that their black hair wasn't beautiful the way it was.
When it comes to therapy delivery, Ferropulse pulsed field ablation system features a proven workflow designed.
But a century after the abolition of slavery, black hair and the afro reigned supreme again. The civil rights movement and the Black Power movement became a motivating force that disrupted European beauty standards. Some Black American men and women began to move away from the relaxers and embrace the natural coils and curls that grew from their heads.
Don't be ashamed of your heritage. Don't be ashamed of your color. Don't be ashamed of your hair. I am black and beautiful and not ashamed to say it.
This era of empowerment was glorified everywhere, from local streets to TV shows such as The Jeffersons and on iconic figures such as Michael Jackson. Fast forward to today, and while black hair is still not widely accepted, it is being celebrated at events like Curlfest, in TV commercials, and it's even emerging on red carpets and runways. And then, in 2018, Black Panther was released. The release of the movie was monumental for many reasons. It was the first time a Hollywood production created an on-screen world populated almost entirely by women with type 4 hair. I embraced my natural hair as well. When I was pregnant with my first baby, I decided to shave my hair and go natural. I knew that if I had a daughter, it was crucial she did not grow up with the same warped concept of beauty that I did. So I'll leave with this. We need to reimagine the way we think about progress, about modernity, about success, about development, and about civilization. We need to think about the way we frame demands for inclusion and representation, and seriously rethink the way we attribute, or more often do not attribute, value to Indigenous knowledge systems. And yes, we need to reject many of the beauty standards we subscribe to, those that privilege lighter skin, thinner noses, or good hair. One of the easiest ways to demonstrate our nascent freedom? Wear our natural hair.
So California is officially the first state to ban racial discrimination based on natural hairstyle.
California became the first state to pass the Crown Act in 2019, aiming to ban race-based hair discrimination, and 6 other states followed suit.
The natural hair movement is more than hair. It is a lifestyle. It is learning to be comfortable in the skin that you're in.
Okay. I'm going to pause there and just open it up to any comments, questions, or reflections based on the video. Anything coming up for people having watched that? Mark.
We are probably quite unusual in our household that we cut each other's hair, and we've just been chatting while watching that video because it's really interesting. So our foster son, he's been with us a long time now, and the video made us start talking about why is it he doesn't want to go to a barber. He wants Michelle to cut his hair. She's always cut his hair. And we were talking about the esteem. So hairstyles and haircuts are like a family dinner time conversation. we're all egging him on to grow an afro. We always have. He never wants to go the whole way and have an afro, but it's a really open conversation and open topic. And the reality is, when he has his haircut, all of us sit around and go, wow, you look so cool like that, with whatever, and this is a personal choice, right? He has whatever the heck style he wants, or that Michelle can create, and that's what we do. And I wonder, therefore, if it is about an esteem thing, that he gets such a good reaction from us and then from other people that he doesn't want to risk perhaps going somewhere else. And I hadn't really thought about it, but my son's girlfriend is also mixed heritage. And she, for the first time, she let me cut her hair at the weekend. And she was really, really nervous. She was so nervous, she moved the whole time. But in the end, she went away, she washed it, and she came back and she just said, I love it so much. And the great thing as a family is we all share that. It's a really, really interesting thing. And perhaps I hadn't realized quite how significant it was. But maybe that's the reason he doesn't want to go to a barber. I don't know.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Mark. And you'll have to send me your address because I'm coming to your house for my next haircut.
I think yours is quite easy looking at the length.
Well, mine won't take long, you know.
I have to say, though, it does come from a place of lots of research. You know, he came to live with us when he was 8. He's 16 now. And back then people just said to me, Google it. You know, and I'd sort of stand in Tesco's looking at all the products thinking, I don't know
minefield.
Skin. I don't, you know, so I started asking other people, you know, I remember one lady, her hair was beautiful. I said, your hair's so beautiful. Can I ask you? And I said, my son, you know, it goes very dry. I don't know, conditioner doesn't work, etc., etc. And she just filmed me and said, go online. This is what you need to try. You know, so it's all come from a place of experimenting and lots and lots of research, and to see that there are packs now is just fantastic progress, because I was left with, you know, I didn't know how to treat his skin. It was very broken, you know, it's bleeding in places. He'd come from extreme neglect and things, and so our learning curve was really steep. But you know, he's a very proud young man now, and he's really happy with himself and his friendship group. You know, we haven't experienced really any negativity, have we? The only thing is, when he was at secondary school, he much prefers that just one of us go to his parents' evening, and that's not because he's not comfortable. He doesn't want to keep having to tell his story. He doesn't have to explain that you know, he lives with foster carers, is in long-term foster care, and that's kind of hurt us, because we both want to go there, but we've let him control the narrative because he doesn't want to tell his story to everybody in a big school when people thought he's happy for people just presume. If Mark goes, he says they just presume that that's my dad and his wife's black, and he's happy just to let people presume. So that curiosity doesn't really bother him. He doesn't see it as racist. He knows it's just people want to hear his story. Yeah, so he's but it's been a steep learning curve for us.
It sounds like as if you've definitely embraced it and done the best that you can do for your foster son. So, you know, that's all we want, really. That's what we want. We want foster carers to be able to feel comfortable to embrace it and not be scared of it. You know, it is.
We wish you guys had come along 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
We hear that a lot. But I'm conscious of time, guys, so I'm going to move us on because we've got a bit more to cover. And I see in the chat somebody's put a book recommendation, so that's excellent. So let's look at practicalities. Let me just share my screen again. Okay, so we've focused on hair. We've looked a bit at the history of hair, the current context. Skincare is another thing that can be overwhelming. And I'll just read this little snippet here. Dry flakes on the surface of the skin may give darker skin an ashy appearance. Ashy/dry skin can occur anywhere on the body, but is commonly found on the elbows, knees, legs, feet, and back. The same dry skin cells are present on all shades of skin, but without the contrast against a darker background, they're less visible. So really, it's about moisturizing twice a day. I would say in the morning and perhaps in the evening again. And if the child does something like swimming or it's particularly cold, you might want to moisturize it, at another point during the day as well. I think around moisturizer, what I would say is avoiding things that have harsh chemicals, maybe going for something like a shea butter, um, or a castor oil, maybe, and really just using things that are quite simple, not too many harsh chemicals in there. It's difficult to suggest one product because every child is different, skin reacts differently. Um, Darker skin can tend to be quite sensitive as well. So it is going to be a journey around this in terms of trying a few different things. Sarah, I don't know if quickly there's anything more you want to add around skincare.
Also, I think it's really good if you start getting your young foster children to start doing it themselves as well and understand and recognize when it is that they need to maybe top it up. My foster child, when he eats anything like oranges or anything that's got acidity in it, he gets this white ash around his mouth, very ashy, and it looks quite irritated. So he now over time realizes that when he has an orange or something like that, he needs to wash his face, his mouth, and put cream around it. So it's about him understanding that in between his fingers, he might need to pay more attention. And, what he does at the moment is he'll put the cream in his hand and just go like that. And I always say, you haven't moved it to the sides. It's not on your ears or anything like that. And I think that can be quite empowering for the child as well to understand that you're taking that extra time to say to him, actually, why don't you try it like this, or try, work it in better and everything. I think that can be quite positive for that sort of like back and forth with your foster child.
Okay. Mark, very quickly, and then we'll just
so
whisper.
very quickly, our young man really likes the vitamin E cream, so not fragranced, no extra thick, and the echinaceous cream, so the thicker ones he applies to elbows and things. He does a lot of skateboarding and sport and things, so I just wanted to mention that for other people that might be wondering what to try.
Brilliant. That's a really good suggestion.
And as James said, if they're doing certain activities, as you just mentioned about skateboarding, but also swimming, chlorine, to black skin is quite evasive. And it can cause a lot of problems if you're not sort of either. A lot of people pre-cream, so they'll use baby oil or something, Vaseline, to stop it getting in places to sort of make the skin drier. But just make sure when they come out of the swimming pool that you get the chlorine off the hair and the skin, but also that you give it, the hair and the skin, good moisture, good cream.
So we'll move on to looking at shampoos, and just a few pointers really. Like we're saying, it's a journey with all this, but ideally look for shampoos that are sulfate free. I think the main thing with afro textured hair is that you want to try and keep moisture. So some of the kind of regular shampoos you might find on the high street are high risk of like taking the moisture out and really drying out the hair. So choose shampoos that are moisturizing, avoid shampoos that contain harsh chemicals, and look for shampoos that are designed for your specific hair concerns. After a shampoo, it's good to use a conditioner. So a rinse out conditioner can be applied to wet hair after shampooing to combat the drying effects of the shampoo. Such a conditioner rehydrates, strengthens, and protects the strands. It also makes the cuticle smooth and prevents roughness, frizz, tangles, and knots. These types of conditioners are heavier and contain ingredients such as fatty acids, surfactants, and oils. And a leave-in conditioner is something that can be used on a daily basis. Typically, it might come as a spray, and it's just to give the hair a bit of a refresh. So yeah, so that's leave-in conditioners. Just very quickly, just wanted to highlight that, there's different types of Afro hair, and really it ranges from 3A all the way to 4C. We've got a QR code here where you can actually identify your own hair type, a useful tool to have if you have a child come into your care and you're like, right, I need to find out what would be the right products to use for them. We will send out the slide deck after the session today. So, no rush to kind of get your phones out and try and do that now. And this, sorry, so very quickly, because I'm just mindful of time. No, go on.
I was just going to say also, for years we've believed that moisture is not the best for black and mixed heritage skin, but black and mixed heritage skin need moisture. So even as James was saying, the leave-in conditioner, you can actually put that into a bottle with some water and dilute it down and actually spray it onto the hair, so that when you come to detangling the hair, it's a lot easier to manage if it has moisture in it.
Brilliant. So what we've got on the screen here is a do-rag and a bonnet. They may look familiar to you. And really these are about protection against frizz and breakage, but also about maintaining that moisture. So typically, after your young person's been to the barber, a good idea is to put on a do-rag, because it will just maintain the presentation of the hair, reduce frizz, and keep it nice and hydrated. So both the do-rag and the bonnet are designed to prevent frizz and hair breakage by reducing friction with rough surfaces. So you might wear one of these at night as well, just to keep the hair intact overnight. I wanted to talk a bit about intersectionality, and I think we have already, but it's just really emphasizing the point that care experienced children often face challenges with identity. And a big part of that is there are many different sort of forces intersecting with one another, right? So you've got, in our case, what we're talking about today is race and ethnicity. You also have the fact that they're care experienced. You also have the fact of ability. So due to their experiences, they may have less ability than maybe some of their classmates. So what we're doing is we're evolving how we hold them in mind and how we think about them, to not just focus on one single dimension, but really think about how the two or more different forms of adversity are intersecting together to create a set of needs that's very specific to that one young person. Yeah, I'm not going to play this video because I don't think we got enough time. But what I will do is just bring your attentions to this slide here. And, we're talking today about hair care and skin care, but that isn't the only way we can support our global majority children. Calling out racism, Sarah, you spoke, really elegantly about that earlier. There's challenging racist stereotypes, open and honest conversations, explore the child's cultural heritage as well as your own, promote a positive self-esteem. There's food, so are we cooking and preparing dishes that reflect where that child is from? Are we finding restaurants that they can go to? Are we watching programs about food that comes from where the child is from? Advocating for them. And education on racism. There's some brilliant books out there at the moment that actually I've found have given me a real sense of empowerment. It's being really well informed on history, on how the state of play has come about. I won't play that.
Also at the moment, because it is Black History season, there are some amazing programs on TV that would probably be really good if you sort of like look and see what they're about. And then obviously if it's, it's the right age and that for your child, that you sit and watch them together.
So I've put this together. This is a message to all future foster carers and current foster carers, really. It's be led by the child and don't take things for granted. There are many versions of Black identity, and it's important to understand this from the child as much as possible. Try and create a safe space for the child in your care to come forward and speak up about race and racism. It's important to find ways to celebrate Black and mixed heritage identities and the wonderful achievements of so many influential people. And lastly, ask for help. So it's important to be aware of what resources out there. Come and reach out to us. One of the things we offer to anybody who purchases a box from us is ongoing video calls where we can talk about anything. I mean, we can talk about hair and skincare. We can talk about food. You know, we will do our best to support you as best as we can. And similarly, a message here for professionals. This is around staying curious, keeping an open mind. Cultural competence is key. And the more we understand the Black care experience, the better positioned we are to support. And finally, unless conscious efforts are made to include, our services will almost certainly exclude. Becoming anti-racist takes work and ongoing efforts. So I've whizzed through that bit just at the end there, but I did want to just save a few minutes for any sort of closing comments or questions people may have.
We literally are on like 60 seconds, I think, James. So I'm just gonna jump in and just say thank you so much to everybody for coming, and suggest that any questions, if you put it into the chat, what I could do is pull together and send you over an email, I think, James, with anything. But just to extend our thanks to you both, and to you, Sarah, as well, and to everybody on the call actually for joining. It's really important that we have these spaces, and I think Razwan made a really good point earlier, not just for October, and we certainly will be looking to embed it in. We will have some conversations with you about your boxes as well, and make sure that that information goes out in our newsletter to local authorities so that they know how to access the boxes. But we're also running a competition across the southeast, and with the prize being one of your boxes as well. So please do look out in the newsletter, and please do speak to, for foster carers on the call, please speak to your supervising social workers about that for more information. But thank you. And I'm going to stop our recording now.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
You.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.